Hello everyone, welcome to the Redmen TV. I'm delighted to be joined by author and comedian Mickey Kerr. Mickey, thank you for joining us today.
It's a pleasure.
I have read your book, which is called Football, the People's Shame, and I wanted to talk to you about it. I think it talks about some really heavy stuff, but I think it will link in massively with the sensibilities of everybody who watches this programme and who understands the ethos of Scousers and this city, and anybody who has become disillusioned with politics and football and or anything else over the last few years, because it might start with football, but it really is a strong indication of where the country is, and there are some learnings from that could be applied to the outside world and stuff as well.
Yeah, definitely. I think that really football is a metaphor for the wider world, really. And it is a microcosm of the wider world. What's happening in politics in this country has been really bad in the last, X amount of years, probably 40 years, really. And football's followed the same path. We've been dispossessed. And when you've got a wider political landscape like we've got, you don't need less politics, you need more. Mm-hmm. And what I'm proposing is a revolution through the football sector where we take on the status quo. When you've got such a powerful enemy, and to me, our enemies are the rich and powerful, and football is a narrow impasse where we can't be outflanked. Mm-hmm. And it's a really underestimated part of the political landscape because it has a lot of cultural power and a lot of influence, and it has millions of people hooked on it. And if we see it in a different way, I think we can create something really special.
And it has the ability to bring people from all walks of life together, which we've proved in recent years with the European Super League and the backlash to that and stuff. So we'll get into all that a little bit later on. For you, you're a teacher, You're a comedian. What made you want to be an author, and why this? Or was this the only reason you wanted to be an author?
Yeah, I didn't want to be an author. I just saw something, did a bit of reading in lockdown, and got into reading, and I'm looking at the wider political landscape. I'm looking at football, and I'm zooming out, and I'm looking at the bigger picture. And I started doing what football fans don't do, which is think long term and think big, because we're all caught in our own club's bubble, and we all think about the next game. We think short term, we think small, and I just saw the link between football and the wider economy. I saw that actually, and I had to do a lot of the digging myself. This is not a well-researched subject, but neoliberalism, or rather Thatcherism, stole football. And it's stolen the wider economy. And in this revolution, this proposed revolution, which is turning football into a public service, which is, it sounds crazy, I know, but it's totally, the theory's there. I've made it happen.
Well, you say in the book, football's more than a business, and we've said it for a long time.
Yeah. And
you're just trying to separate business from football, right?
That's right. I mean, it's the sporting realm. It doesn't belong in the commercial realm. Like, no football club should be in debt. There should be no debt in football. No football club should ever go bust. A football club is not a typical business, and to treat it like a typical business is ridiculous. And look what's the result. We've got, I'm not being jingoistic here, I'm saying it how it is. We've got, our football clubs are privately owned businesses, and they're foreign owned. These people don't know us, they don't have any tie to us, they don't care about our historic footballing culture. And I think one part of not putting that book, Chris, I think this is really important. I think our footballing heritage is on life support machine. I think if you do think big and look into the future, where are we going with English football? What's it becoming? Because it's not about locality. It's not about family. It's about commercialisation and winning. It's about oil. It's about US private equity firms coming in and controlling us. And basically the
franchises, game abroad, everything else.
We are being, we're being assimilated into the Borg. I think was is a Star Trek thing. You get the idea of it's all this huge globalized commercial machine that is also commercializing us from the inside. And we need to remember what English football was about. We need to remember what was passed down to us through the generations. And there's a way of doing this in the 21st century that's not just misty-eyed nostalgia looking back and going, oh, wasn't everything amazing? It's about looking back at the past, taking the concepts that were best and moving forward into the future in the 21st century, in the digital age. and selling our brand, our product to the rest of the world. It's about ownership, this, really.
I think that's right. And I think, one of the things that stuck with me very early on in the book is the line, profit margins come first, fans last. And I think that was the point where you got your hooks into me. And I was like, yeah, that's right. Of course it is. They're a business, and the shareholders have to look at what's best for the business, not what's best for the community, not what's best for the fans, aka the customers, or anything else. It is how to make a profit from the football club.
Yeah, and that comes from the governance. So the reason that Liverpool support, I know for a fact that people listening to this, and you will know loads of Liverpool fans that can't get into the ground. It's happening everywhere, every club, because the football clubs are forced to pursue this profit-first agenda because they've got to make money to spend money. So this is what it all comes down to the system of governance. This is what they're pushing. This is the agenda they're pushing. So even if football clubs want to be nice, if they want to do, they can't, because really what it comes down to is you've got to field a title-winning team, especially if you're Liverpool, or a title challenging team at least. And to do that, you've got to spend money. And to do that, you've got to make money. So really what's happening is, working class people, everyday people have been frozen out. And you see this right across the Premier League. It's just about really the tourist or the business class who spend more money. At Man City, they're getting rid of season tickets. When someone dies or gives the season ticket up, they're not going back in the pot. They're going to, because they want tourists who spend more money. They want rich people who spend more money. They want corporate space.
They don't want me going to the ground and, all right, I'm in a fortunate position that I can afford to go to the game, but they don't want me going because I don't go to the club shop and I don't drink in the ground. I drink in a pub, like I've always drank in a pub on the outskirts. Then that money rightfully goes into the local economy because it's owned by local people. It's something, from a personal standpoint, I believe in buying from a butcher, I believe in buying from a bakery, I believe in buying from a veg shop, and I believe in supporting local. I don't drink in Wetherspoons. I don't drink in any big companies. I try not to go to McDonald's because the money just gets siphoned.
You try not to.
Kids. I've got two kids.
Yeah, fair enough,
I've got two kids.
Hey, my kids don't go there either, mate. It's a bad restaurant, that's what I call it. Because it is a bad restaurant. It's terrible for them. It's not just the food. But you're right, football's about locality. And, why? Imagine owning Liverpool. Imagine owning that. And
I have done.
Yeah.
So many times.
Well, you should.
It never ends well, believe it or not.
Well, there's a different way to do this. You've got to think big about the system of governance. And we're not talking about the wider economy. We're just talking about the sporting realm. We're talking about the football sector. There's an entire different way to do this. And like I said, you've got to think big. And what we've got to do really is not stop English football from being a globalised brand, because that's a great thing. But we've got to bring that locality into it as well. And I think that's a great product actually to sell. I think people around the world want to see local, because the way that things are going now in the wider economy and the globalised kind of commercial juggernaut that is the neoliberal system now, and the way that it's kind of falling apart, politics, the centre ground is going because people are moving left or right. Because it's failing. The current system is failing. It's failing us, and it's failing football.
It's not always failed, has it? And it's actually, it was a revelation to me in the book, because it's actually a fairly recent failure. One that was happened in my lifetime, one that's happened in your lifetime. So I want to discuss, obviously, before we talk about the future, what can we learn from the past?
Basically, football was settled by the Victorians. We know that. Professionalised in the 1880s. And the Victorians realised a few things. They strictly controlled and regulated football, because if you don't do that, you get monopolisation. Actually, it was when Liverpool first won it. I think they won it in 1901, okay? It might be 1900. After Liverpool won it, they got a wage cap. So they realised, I think Liverpool was obviously spending a lot of money. So a wage cap came in, and it was really fair. The away games, if you're a small local or provincial town, going to a big urban centre like Liverpool, they shared gate receipts.
Like the FA Cup still does.
Yeah, it's about fairness. So you've got the sharing of gate receipts, you've got a wage cap, and you've got a really vital piece of regulation called Rule 34, which meant essentially that football clubs were run as non-profit organisations. You weren't allowed to take money out of a football club. Shareholders were prohibited from taking funds out. And this is an incredible revelation. David Conn's a really good journalist on this. Another one that is Adrian Tempany. You might know Adrian Tempany. He wrote and the Sun Still Shines.
I've not read it. No.
Oh, you've got to read that. It's an amazing book about Hillsborough. So he was there. these journalists have done some great work in understanding how football went from the people's game to the people's shame. And the key year, believe it or not, is 1983. The key decade is the 1970s, because that's the change from collective Keynesianism over to kind of individualised Thatcherism, neoliberalism, and it's got a lot to do with oil, actually, believe it or not. I mean, the oil industry is massive in football now, it controls it. In 1970, oil was cheap and unemployment was low. By 1980, that's reversed. Oil is expensive. People will remember the 1978 winter of discontent. We had to go down to a 3-day week because we couldn't afford enough oil to run the economy. We needed a change. The country needed a change. So in comes individualism, in comes Thatcherism, and that massively impacted football. In the late 70s, you start getting the advertising coming in. Mm-hmm. And as it does, technology changes football. The reason 1983 is so significant is threefold. First of all, you've got broadcasting weekly. That never happened before. You've got BBC, ITV pumping money into the sport. 1983 is the first year this scraps the gate receipts being shared. So you see this individualism, the big clubs want more for themselves. And 1983 is the first year that Rule 34 was bypassed. It was Irving Scholar of Spurs. He was there. He was chairman before Sugar. And this is how he did it. He wrote to the FA and said, I want to take money out of football clubs, because obviously there's money being pumped into the industry now. And the FA didn't respond. So he just went ahead with this commercialisation plan. He did it he set up a holding company. Mm-hmm. So it's tethered to the parent company. Spurs is the parent company. The money goes from the parent company into the holding company. It doesn't leave the club, but guess who owns the holding company? So that's how they did it. And that holding company model,
and then he can take money out of the holding company. Exactly.
So that then, it's all behind closed doors. No one sees this happening.
But the FA knew he was going to do it.
The FA just let it go, because basically you've got this Keynesian model being replaced by this neoliberalism. Is quite an abstract term, but it means basically privatisation, deregulation, and free market economics. So open up the everything to the world markets, which is exactly what football clubs have. They've been brought to market and bought by the oil industry and US private firms. So it's very neoliberalised. It doesn't work in the sporting realm. The Victorians knew that. The Americans know that now.
Yeah, they do it now. You look at the
Americans
franchises.
have got a very socialist system in sport.
And yet the biggest hyper-capitalist markets in the world.
Exactly.
So they're completely offset against what they do.
But they've realised that's how sports should be governed. And this is what I'm proposing in this revolution. We basically ring-fence the football sector and do it how sport should be done, which is a controlled market. And there's a way of doing everything differently. And we could talk about ownership rights, but broadcasting's a big one. The broadcasting now, as it is the Premier League sell the rights. Companies around the world buy it up. And then, it's a very fractured and inefficient model. There's a different way to do it. And this has been floated. I know the Premier League are thinking about it, but then again, the Premier League are like the government. They're lobbied by the powers that be, and they're getting they're getting money in the pockets, basically, to keep things as they are. If you do it from a single digital source, so we're talking about a digital broadcasting platform, like Amazon do, the technology's there, it works great, like Apple do in the MLS. Mm-hmm. This already exists. Then you can make a lot more money. You centralise all the funds. 200 million people pay to watch English football. If you charge them £10 a month, that's £24 billion a year. Now, imagine if we owned that company. Because all you've got to do is wait for a contract cycle to end. And you can take it for free. Imagine if we owned that company. And before you move on, Chris, let me tell you this country's got no digital tech at all. Mm. We have, in the 21st century, in the digital age, we've got no digital tech. It's all American companies. So it's crazy.
It is crazy, but I think we're getting ahead of ourselves.
We are massively. I often tend to do that. I'm sorry.
We're looking back at the past and stuff, and we've seen what monopolisation and privatisation has done to football clubs and stuff like that. But then, in the very recent past, we've seen the European Super League.
Yeah.
And I think this is all just setting the scene for, well, if you've agreed with everything that's been said so far about, well, actually, why are our football clubs making money? Why are they making money over in America or over in Dubai or the Middle East or wherever it is? Why isn't more money getting pumped back in? Then we'll get on to, in a minute, well, what can we do about it? But the European Super League is a great glimpse into the future, I suppose, isn't it?
Yeah, it's on the cards. When you look at the economics, it's telling it has to happen. And what you've actually got now for the first time, and Liverpool are doing great in it, is you've actually got a league. It actually is a league. This happens incrementally. Psychologically, we're all expecting and accepting a European Super League. And interestingly, the company that did it, A22, they challenged UEFA because they came along and went, the 12 clubs signed up to it, if you remember. And this happened outside the remit of UEFA and FIFA. Because they challenged the power base, UEFA they've panicked. So what's happening now is they're having to cede advantage to the bigger clubs, UEFA, because without the bigger clubs, they lose everything. All that commercial activity is gone and UEFA are going to collapse. You look at Man City with these charges, they're not going to go ahead because they can't afford to annoy City. They need them. So loads of power has gone to the big clubs. Liverpool are included in that. These big clubs aren't owned by Liverpool fans. They're owned by American businessmen who are chomping at the bit to get this over the line, the Super League. This is what I'm suggesting. Even if we were to fail in terms of a revolution, you've got to threaten the power base because you will get advantages. If they see a movement, and I'm talking about the Premier League now, if they see a movement, I'm talking about the FA, I'm talking about the EFL, all of them. If they see a movement that threatens their power, then you will start seeing ticket prices plummet because they have to respond.
Okay, well, the second part of the book is, it's all about gaining control, isn't it? And I think I can imagine that if people are watching at home, they've probably agreed with everything that's been said so far. The gaining control part, I think, is probably the hardest hurdle for anyone listening and also in the fight, I suppose, in your fight. Yeah,
there's an imagination barrier here. So what I'm about to suggest is it's really radical. But I'll argue that we need that. We talked earlier about the political system being as it is. There's no point in moaning about it. We need new ideas. We're desperate for new political ideas in this country. So this is what I've come up with, and I think it blends right and left ideologies as well, which I think is really exciting. You speak to a left winger, and I know Liverpool's got a really proud socialist history. You speak to a left winger, they'll tell you they're losing. You speak to a right winger, and they'll tell you they're losing. So who's winning? No one's winning. So it's about thinking differently. Now, this really comes down to ownership. It's a battle of ownership. There is a way, and Brexit, by the way, is beneficial. There's a way for us to own our own clubs and own the broadcasting, to own everything, actually, that English football generates. How, in layman's terms, is that possible? What I'm going to do now is talk about very briefly HS2, and it's not a tangent. I'll come back to it because I want to talk about the theory of dispossessing people from their property, because football clubs are private property, and legally, you can't do it in the EU. Because of Brexit, you can do it exactly. Here. So Brexit's given us an opportunity. HS2, and I'll come back to Brexit. HS2 is a train line from London to Birmingham that's cost exactly, yeah, just it's trying to be. It's cost 70 billion so far. So that's 70,000 million. That's correct so far, and the figure keeps rising. If you're in the way of that train line, your house gets taken off you, because the state has the right to take people's property. The state has the right to take people's businesses. It has to be in the public interest. That's the first thing, and it has to be done in accordance with the law. And the third stipulation is this: once you've done that, you've got to compensate fairly at market value. So if your house is in the way, you get, it's worth 250 grand. You'll probably get in the region of 300 grand. Go and live somewhere else. This is in the public interest. In the 1970s, this is going back a bit, there was a shipping company that was nationalised. So the people who were running that shipping company did not want it to be nationalised. It's very profitable, but it was. It took 4 years through the courts, just before that switch we talked about from Keynes to Milton Friedman, from collectivism to individualism. This can be done. Inside the European Union, dispossessed claimants, and I'm talking about football club owners or, the shareholders, they would have a right of appeal through European courts, and it would be a really messy, drawn-out affair. All that regulation is gone now. We've got Brexit for, good or bad. I'm not arguing either way. But in terms of the nationalisation of English football, which is what I'm proposing, it's really beneficial. They can't claim to anything. We have got the sovereignty to do this. You walk in and you dispossess them. How? Through acts of parliament. You've got to think big here. Acts of parliament, we've got to go into politics. If we want to change English football, we have to politicise. You go in and there's nothing they can do. They don't want to lose this property. They have no choice. As long as it's in the public interest and as long as they're fairly compensated. Now, I mentioned HS2, 70 billion. Every club in this country collectively is costs somewhere between 25 and 30 billion. Now, it's not big. You know, you go back to the COVID situation, track and trace cost 37 billion. It was a spreadsheet. Every football club costs less than track and trace. If you can get them at the lower end, it's about 2/3 the price of track and trace. The Elizabeth line is a small part of London's sprawling network, 22 billion. So this is small amounts at state level. Mm-hmm. We mentioned earlier that figure of 24 billion. So we know that football is generating tens of billions of pounds a year. And we know that football clubs are incredibly cheap, culturally really significant, but no one's seen this. They're tiny. It's a tiny economic footprint, is the football sector.
And this isn't just, for clarification, this isn't just the Premier League clubs. This is
every single club. Football's cheap. It's culturally significant. It's a really underestimated kind of field in the wider political landscape. We can take the status quo on. We can do it in the football sector. We need a popular movement, of course we do. But, you know, the long march starts with its first step. This is about us fighting for everything. It's about us threatening the power base. You can take broadcasting for free. You just wait to the end of a contract cycle. I might have mentioned that earlier, but you know, we've got to get rid of the Premier League, replace them all. Replace all the FA, all the EFL. They're all going because they're all corrupt. They've all been doing it wrong.
In its first instance then, it sounds much easier than I'm sure it is. You've got to have state backing.
Yeah, we've got to say, by the way, Chris, our own government don't want us to do this. Yeah. The Labour and the Conservative governments, whichever it might be, they are dead against this. So we are taking on our own government as well. But who listening don't want to do that? It starts small. It starts with the early band of radicals. What I'm suggesting is massive. And I think that's what we need to do. There's other things about football as well we can take. What I'm suggesting is this. You take all the industry, all the manufacturing, and you kick out all the billionaires and you redistribute the wealth. That's basically the premise.
Okay, so you've got the football clubs. How the fuck are you owning them?
Great question.
What is the model?
So, yeah, this is not a nationalisation like Attlee inspired in the post-war era. There's a new form of ownership which suits us perfectly. The stars have aligned. It's called a public commons partnership. The state will not own football. It will own a tiny fraction, a tiny percentage. We will, as paying members. We're using the state as a lever to buy football clubs and hand over rights to us. A public commons partnership is merged between state, small percentage, and the common association, people, commoners. That's the two ownership parties. They're governed in a different way. It's all about democracy. You democratise in English football. But a public commons partnership basically is, they're usually done on a small level, but they can be upscaled. You've got a business that is merged with a local authority, so it's kind of merged with the council, but not in a way that the council tells it what to do. The exact reverse of that. It tells the council what to do. It informs the council and gets land purchases cheap and stuff like that. It's also governed by a common association, by the owners, us. And the third thing is basically a body of experts, relevant experts. So football clubs will be run by experts. They'll be held accountable to us, the common association, and they'll be merged with local councils as well. And that's how we're going to do it. But we're also going to create a huge public commons partnership that has a gambling company. I mean, it's such a simple idea. A public gambling company we all own. Gambling's a lot of money in this country. And
wasn't there public gambling companies in the past?
Yeah, there was.
In horse racing?
Yeah, there was. The Totalizer, yeah. It went really well. It was created by, of all people, Winston Churchill. And it was, who no one would accuse of being a socialist. And it was stopped by Jack Straw, who supposedly kind of was. But basically, it's a way of you take gambling funds, profits, and you reinvest them. At the moment, all the gambling is offshore. There should be no advertising in English football. There should be no debt in English football. But we all want to gamble. Great. Let's form some public gambling companies. When the house wins, we win. I think it's about £16 billion a year gambling in this country. It's huge. But when you look at it, I spoke to gambling experts, across that sector. It's really sad. I mean, about 40% of gambling profits come from problem gamblers. So what we really need to do is shrink the sector by about 40-50% and make sure all the money goes back into communities. I mean, there's an argument. They have this in France, it's a different system, and in Northern Europe as well, in Norway, they have public gambling companies. I don't think we should do this initially because I think it's a wider fight. I think we should just have one single or a few gambling companies we own. But what about just taking the whole sector gambling into public ownership? Because you don't want innovation in the gambling sector. You don't want market competition. You just want people to gamble, have a nice time, and no one to get hurt. So that I don't think we should have that impact. The gambling kind of sector there's some powerful people you're up against. We're up against the oil industry, and the US corporations. So we don't want to take on too many enemies. So, but
that might be one fight too far for you.
Well, do you know what, mate? Do you know what? My political enemies are the rich and powerful.
Yeah,
and I think there should be a lot of people nodding their heads here because that's who we've got to take on here. If we want our country to succeed and we want a fairer, better world, we've got to take on the rich and powerful, and the football sector is a really good place to do it. Also, shirts as well. You're not buying Liverpool top because Nike or Adidas or Umbro make it. You're buying it because Liverpool. That's it. Why don't we own the shirt manufacturing as well? And we can do it onshore here. We've got a massive trade deficit. We need more manufacturing. And we can put some offshore as well, probably in Asia where to keep costs down. We could run it as non-profit. The jobs could be there. That's our profit, just jobs, good jobs. But it's a way, again, of controlling the landscape and making sure that people aren't working for 21p an hour, like they literally were making England tops in Taiwan or wherever. I think it might have been Taiwan, yeah. It's a disgrace. It's a disgrace, complete. And what you talked about breweries earlier, having a drink at a local, you talked about drinking at a local pub. Why not own a brewery system? Every time we go in, we know that drink pays back into English football. Like I said, it's a way of controlling the huge funds that are being made by English football and putting them back into our communities, and democratically we decide what to do with the money.
Okay, so obviously you've talked a little bit about the collective ownership model, the PCP, the Common Association stuff, but I think from anybody who's watching this right now, that was very broad. What makes us as Liverpool fans different from a Manchester United fan or someone in Tottenham? And can you explain the model in the differences between club ownership by the fans and ownership of the entirety?
So I'll break that down and I'll talk about how football clubs will run, because I think people will be interested in that. But first of all, I'll talk about the wider concepts. What my idea is this: you pay £10 a month to own your club, and you pay £1 a month to own the wider manufacturing PCP. So within that massive giant corporation, you've got a gambling company, you've got a social media company, you've got a brewery system, you've got manufacturing shirts, you've also got this huge broadcasting service, very powerful, very influential. This is one of the biggest corporations in the UK because you're merging them all together inside a giant public commons partnership. We will have actually the power to lobby our own central government through that, because that's where lobbying is now. It's at the behest of corporations. So it's time to own a corporation. That's what the people need to do. And this is a great opportunity because I think that Liverpool, a city like Liverpool, should have an underground system. If we give away 10%, I know I'm going on a tangent here, but 10% ownership rights to foreigners, they pay £1 a month. Liverpool could quite easily get 100 million people around the world. Supposedly Man United have got 650 million fans. I think Liverpool is somewhere there. But if you get 100 million people to pay £1 a month, it's over £1 billion a year just coming straight into Liverpool. You've got Everton as well. You share the city with them. This is a way of making money. We can lobby central government. Listen, we'll put in $2 billion a year. You put in $2 billion a year. Let's build an underground system in. You lobby. Well, we need long-term investments. That's why this country is going down the drain, because of the short-termism of Thatcherite financialisation. You've got to think long investments. This huge corporation will give us the power to lobby whoever is in charge. How will football clubs be run? I don't know, because this is about democracy. You could have fans picking the team. So it's up to us to decide how to run them.
So we're paying, let's say, £10 a month. That's for ownership of Liverpool.
Yeah.
And pounds to go into the Commons Association, the other
wider manufacturing one. Yeah.
Right. Cool. And we've got the ability in your system to bring in foreign investment from fans from all over the world.
Yeah, on a small subscription.
On a small scale.
Yeah.
How does all of this actually impact our communities? Be that you're in Liverpool or be that you're in Tottenham.
Let's consider how much money's been made in English football. Let's talk about the fact that you've got a broadcasting channel, right? That you can have your own. Every game would be going out, live to the world. You have your own Liverpool channel on that as well. The aim would be to get as many fans as you can paying into your club. With all that money, we're talking minimum tens of millions, possibly low billions annually, to come into Liverpool. What do you want to do with it? I've done some gigs for Zoe's Place, and it's incredible that you've raised £6 million for that incredible charity. If you're not from Liverpool, you might not know about it, but there's a children's hospice.
We raised money ourselves for it.
It's an amazing achievement. But then straight away, that's a failure of politics, that.
Yeah,
the fact
25% of their funding comes from frigging NHS grants or something like that.
It's ridiculous. Offices. This is the type of thing that you can do. You have got hundreds of millions, if not billions, at your disposal. Zoe's Place is a click of the fingers. Everton, Liverpool, bang, what do you want to do? 10 million each? Yeah, no, they'll build 2 of them. Whatever you want to do. This is a public service where it's the rule of subsidiary. So that means basically all decision making is pushed down to the lowest point possible. At times, you can't run a corporation by going, what does everyone want to do? You need to actually take away democracy at times to run an efficient corporation. Every 4 years or whatever, you can have election, or bigger decisions can be made by general consensus. But there is in the world of business, which is what I'm talking about, we need to be a little bit authoritarian to get things done. But generally, the rule of subsidiary, you're going to turn around and, there'll be a lot. Democracy creates problems. You have some scousers wanting to do this, some scousers wanting to do that. Some people that, Liverpool's a global club supported around the country. Other people say, what about people outside Liverpool? You'll have all these arguments, but these are better problems to have than what we've got now. In fact, do you know what we have now, Chris? Nothing. Absolutely we have nothing to lose. So why not attack?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And then obviously if you're thinking about sort of the wider side of things, obviously you spoke about this, but the 50+1 rule in Germany and stuff like that. And what I found quite interesting, I think, is that they're attacking things that their fan bases care about. You'll see it if you're a fan of football. You'll see it on Twitter or Facebook or Instagram or wherever when they put these big signs up because they believe that something needs to be done about a certain situation. What you're essentially proposing is fan ownership. Where the money is actually taken by the fans as well, but then redistributed into the communities. So if Liverpool needed its own water company or whatever, they could do that if they wanted to. If they wanted to put solar panels on the roof of Anfield, they could do. It could provide energy somewhere else. These are the tangible benefits that ownership of a football club could offer to fans in this country.
Yeah, I've given a few suggestions because I don't know. What would you do with the money? But no one's ever asked you how you. In our cities, no one asks you what. You never get told or asked. Sorry, what's the next building in your city going to be? It just happens. The council or it's kind of an abstract. World markets kind of dominate or whatever. I don't even know who makes these decisions. We don't. So this is a way of all these funds being put into Liverpool. Every club around the country is profitable. There's no debt in football. It's a ridiculous concept. This is the sporting realm. No club should ever go bust. What a ridiculous concept. It's not a business. It's a club. It's a football club.
But how do you attack that side of things then? How do you, fund the pyramid? In part one. And how do you stop clubs going out of business?
Well, the football clubs would not be typical businesses. They'd be funded by a central source, mainly from the broadcasting. Every club, this is going to sound too radical for some people in terms of like the regulation of football. You've got to put a wage cap on because you've got to put a ceiling on spending, and then otherwise what you'll get is Liverpool spend 1 billion, Man United spend 2 billion, so you're going to spend 4 billion. I'm talking about football wages here. So you've got to have it, but as soon as you put a wage cap on, straight away people are going, well, all the best players will leave. So you've got to there's two ways you can stop this happening. First of all, up the wages. At the minute, they're about 3.5 billion. It's not much. I've suggested 5.5 billion. But there's also a bit of regulation I've imported from the US called the designated player rule. You might remember David Beckham going to LA Galaxy in 2007. The MLS have got a wage cap, but they wanted Beckham. So they created the designated player rule. You can sign 3 players outside the wage cap. So straight away, you've got 60 contracts that are free markets. It could be 5 players outside the wage cap. It's a fluid concept. So that's how we're going to do it. And for me, I think we should have 2 players, again, a fluid concept, could be 1 or 3, whatever, 2 players born in certain hospitals on the pitch at all times under the age of 23. And that way you're reinvigorating that kind of like that youth development that we all love to see. We love local players and we love world-class players. Let's merge them together. And I think that creates a fairer system where clubs have got to look inwards. You've got to earn your own success. And then hopefully you get players like Trent coming through who stay in the team. And you could have 4 or 5 Scousers in that lineup, and it's challenging for a league title, it's challenging for a Champions League. That's the idea, I suppose. It's about locality, it's about romance, it's about community.
Yeah. Absolutely, and I think the designated player stuff and the wage cap thing's interesting because when I was reading the book, I thought, oh, people are going to leave, and it was almost the next paragraph you addressed the issue. And the idea of just make it more than what Spain pay, and people aren't going to leave, are they really?
No.
If you just make the wage cap as big, and because they can't compete anyway, is what you're saying.
Yeah, and also, I've not put this in the book, but where would the billionaires go? Because they ain't going to Germany. The Germans don't have it. The Germans are really politicised, and we've got to look at that. They've achieved some amazing things. They've taken on vested corporate interests and won. They kicked out those an £800 million deal in terms of broadcasting. They got rid of it. Because if you organise as fan bases and take on the status quo, we've already seen the European Super League. We can win. We really can. We've just got to start small.
And what about the other people who suck money out of the game, like agents?
Yeah. I mean, the power of agents is ridiculous now in football. They should be trained, regulated. I mean, and paid paid a wage. You could put agents on 150, 200 grand a year, and they take 0% from every deal. And if a world-class player wants to come to England and their agent's kicking up a fuss, we could turn around to the player and say, listen, here's your deal, get rid of your agent, and say, well, we'll pay him nothing. Because that agent's going to take 20% of that deal. So you've got to take the fight to them, Chris. This is about a total relook of how we govern the game and on all the things we've normalised. Let's put them all to one side and think rationally. When you do think rationally about English football, you become a sane person in an insane world. I mean, Saudi Arabia own Newcastle. Just saying that's ridiculous. And the way that football is governed, we all know it's ridiculous. You could relate this to the wider economy. You could relate this to the wider political landscape. There's a huge opportunity here. We've got powerful enemies. Good. That's who our enemies should be. Let's take them on in the football sector. And I know it sounds massive and it's on the horizon. But I've just been on Toffee TV earlier. I didn't mean to cheat on you. I'm sorry.
It's all right.
But one of their comments, the guy at the end said, I think I might have said it earlier. Yeah, the long march starts with the first step, and that's what this is. 2025, we're going to organise. This book comes out on the 3rd of December. I think it's about 2 weeks away now. And all I'm asking you to do is think about the first step, to think about fighting back, because it's going to take an early band of radicals, and they'll watch us, and they'll laugh at us. But when we start making small wins, small gains, they'll join us.
Well, what are the small wins? How do you get it? How do you get it started? Because I've had this in life where I need to do something, and then you've got a problem. It's like, well, I need to sort that first. Well, actually, that means to do that, I need to sort that first, and I need to sort that first. Where the hell do you start? I
think there's some obvious things like a website, a movement that you join. You don't need to pay anything. You just a newsletter that goes out. A political party will start to emerge. But really, for me, I think we've got to organise in our localities. And I think I've not put it in the book, but I think local elections. Organise, take your local elections. They're really easy to take. Not many people vote. Little things like that just create bits of press and bits of media, and it pricks people's ears. Little victories like that. And
so let's say I was to go and get into a local election right now as an independent. How does that help get a football club back?
It's about building the movement. If you look at the short term, we've got 4 years because the next election is around 2029. It's about building belief. This is just about belief, Chris. If everyone actually believed we could do it, we'd do it. And it's that simple. We've got to organise. I'm not an organiser, if I'm honest with you. And if I'm truly honest with you, I don't know. I don't really know the answers to your questions. I just know that I'm going to stand and fight. It's binary. It's a binary choice, Chris. Lay down and take it, or stand and fight, and we'll figure it out.
So obviously the Rule 34 thing, it's the one thing that I took away from the book that I just couldn't get my head around.
It's crazy how no one knows about it.
How the fuck did that happen? Honestly, like, we were in a position where football club owners weren't allowed to take money out. And then the law, in the FA's law, changed.
They didn't. Well, it's never been repealed. Rule 34 was in the FA handbook as late as the 1990s. It's never been repealed. It was just bypassed. It was just ignored. So what happens is it's incremental. So at first you couldn't take any money out. Then it was 5%. Then eventually it did climb to about 15%. You could take out up to 15%. So you can see the regulation. You can see the wider political landscape affecting football. And that's all it is. And I think that I talked about the 1970s being the key decade. So around 50 years ago, I think we're at a similar position now in the 2020s where we were in the 1970s. Where, don't get me wrong, it was harsher then in terms of people didn't have enough. We couldn't run the economy. We were a 3-day week. But you can see the wider political landscape now is fertile ground for revolution. We need to do something different. Keir Starmer comes in and there's a bit of hope, isn't there? But it's just the same as before. It's exactly the same as the neoliberalism that the Tories have been doing. We're just ceding more and more advantage to the rich and the powerful, and we're becoming dispossessed. And I think it's sowing the seeds of fascism as well, because people aren't being listened to. And in the modern world, what a great thing a football club could be to get people together. You've got to make decisions about finances. You're going into meeting halls, you're looking at people in the face. When you speak to someone like we're doing now, it's a lot easier than online, isn't it? We've become horrible online. I think we need to get offline and meet up. And I think a football club's a great place to do that. It bridges communities. It'll make us get together and discuss things. What a fantastic concept that is. And I think the country needs it. We need digital tech. We need our own independence away from American corporations. The Chinese tried to get in Huawei or whatever it's called.
Huawei.
Yeah, and the Americans just said no. We've tried to tax them, Amazon. They won't let us do it. They're now, I think they're trying to tax warehouses now. I think it was warehouse space. Because
the last I heard on the Amazon stuff, they keep their profit margins artificially low because if you make less than, insert figure here, I think it was 10% profit, they don't get taxed, so they make like 9.5%, which is billions and billions, by the way. But because it's a less percentage, they don't pay it. That's the last I heard.
They're all holed up in tax havens of Ireland, Netherlands, Luxembourg. They don't pay tax here. There's a great book called Vassal State. It's about how basically Britain's become a vassal state. We're just part of the American imperial empire now, and they don't consult us on anything. They don't care about us. They just take money from us. So my argument is this: why not have our own domestic companies actually competing with them? Credit cards is a great one. Every time you scan a credit card, it's American owned. Well, they don't pay any tax on it. What about our own credit card company, where every time you go and beep it, it's a tiny fraction of a percentage, but it all goes back to us.
Well, that's why cash is king anyway.
Yeah, it is. Cash is king. But
how many times can you spend a fiver on a card before it disappears completely?
I don't know.
25 times, 25p, roughly speaking, gets sacked off in fees. But you spend a fiver in a shop, it gets passed on, it's a fiver in a shop. You spend another fiver in a shop, it stays as a fiver.
Exactly. But, we need to be competing in the 21st century. We need to be able to access our own domestic market without having to go to a foreign company. Again, I don't want to sound jingoistic. It's not. We need our own infrastructure in this country, and we need to stand up and start fighting for it instead of moaning all the time. We need to stand for something, because when you really think about it, what does English football fandom stand for? I don't know.
You know what type of a fan I am? I know what, and you speak about a few different types of fans in the book. And I think there was an interesting, I've never really thought about what type of a fan you are or other people are. But can you just talk about those 5 different sort of types? Was it 5 or 4 different types of fan?
It was 5 types of,
wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how big how many people they surveyed here, but they realised that there's football is expanding its popularity, and people are engaged with it in different ways. And not necessarily like a lifer is basically somebody who grows up supporting a club, that passed down for the probably parents, a lifetime supporter. And that's not necessarily the general theme anymore. People are not lifers. They enjoy stats, analysing stats. There's people who enjoy the social side of football. So they just go out for a drink with their friends, watch the football, on TV. There's people who enjoy, like people like Marcus Rashford, standing up for wider political aims and themes or whatever. So people engage with football in different ways. And for those people who are really invested emotionally in a club, the way that football's been governed is fine. They're not bothered because they go to the pub, they watch football, enjoy a drink with their friends. They like the stats. They like watching world-class players. It's actually up for those of us who are, and I'd probably argue it's a lot of people listening, because you're invested in your club emotionally. The lifers, if you want to put it like that, it's up to us to make the stand because we are the ones being ripped off. But what I've talked about, it's not just about football, it's about the country as well. This is a massive opportunity. And like I said before, it's binary. I'm going to stand for it. And the more people that do, it's about growing belief. It's not about providing hope, because hope is what you have at the end when there's nothing that can be done. There's loads we can do. And I think we've got to enjoy the journey as well.
Absolutely. Listen, I honestly really did enjoy the book. I probably shouldn't have read it in 24 hours. It was heavy going, as you can probably imagine by listening to Mickey for the last 50 minutes or whatever.
It is a lot, yeah.
On for. What I will say is I was incredibly surprised with how into it I was, with how much I agreed with a huge amount of information in the book. And I really do think it is a book for all football fans of whatever club, because it does tap into more than football. And I know I said that at the beginning. It taps into people's sensibilities around the government and how we as the working or middle classes, or if they're even a thing anymore, are actually being treated by people in this world. And so it should give hope, even if it may not be, that there are people like you out there trying to take the fight to people who think of us as a number.
Yeah, they do. And there's a lot of political campaigns out there at the moment, and a lot more important ones than perhaps the one I'm suggesting. But what I'm just hoping you can see what I can see, Chris, because it's a massive opportunity. And I honestly think we can win. It's about belief. You've got to train yourself to believe, because we can't keep going as we are. And I said before, this is a binary choice. Once you actually decide to start fighting, it's liberating. We fight for everything. We're not taking crumbs anymore. We're replacing you. And that's a powerful thing to have in your mind. You go on the attack. We have got nothing to lose. There's no trenches been built here because we've got nothing to defend. We have nothing to lose. And I hope that people have been inspired enough to order this book and read it over the December period and read it over Christmas, whatever. And in 2025, I'm not looking for followers. I'm looking for leaders, mate. And leaders will emerge, I'm sure. I just think Liverpool's the place. I think it really is. It's such an incredible city, 2 massive clubs, and people who fight against the establishment, and people who are see themselves as outsiders. And this is what we've got to do. We've got to get outside the system and attack it.
Okay, so there you go. Mickey, thank you so much for your time, mate.
Thanks, mate.
Massively appreciate it. You can get his book from 4th of December, did you say?
I think it's the first Tuesday, 3rd, but you can obviously pre-order it now. It's
You better not be on Amazon.
It is on Amazon. That's the link I'm pushing. We've got to get the Billionaires out.
Okay, now.
Well, you've got to start somewhere.
You've got to self-publish that one.
Oh, mate. Well, the publishing firm.
Can't believe that. It's on Amazon.
That was the first link.
It's on Amazon.
Of course it is. What else is on it? Yeah. All that money's going straight out of our country, mate.
No, listen, honestly, I really do recommend reading it. I think you should make your own mind up on it. But if you haven't read the first part, which is about 40, 50 pages, and found yourself nodding along to everything, then I don't know what me and you are doing here, to be honest with you, because everything in that first part is just like, oh my God, yeah, how the hell did we get here? You know what I mean? And everything after that is a version of the future that could be possible.
A possible future, mate, and let's find it out together. Like I said, I don't know how we're going to do this. I just know that we're going to do it. We're going to have a go.
Okay, so there you go. Give Mickey a chance. Buy it on Amazon. That's fucking hilarious.
You can buy it elsewhere, I think. I don't know. Yeah, but come on. We're stuck here, aren't we? But it's been a rock and a hard place,
There's
mate.
really not many places, is there? They have absolutely ruined everything for small businesses. Amazon, they are absolute twats. On that, you can buy our merch from redmenmerch.com. I'm just kidding. Thank you very much. Leave your thoughts in the comment section, of course. Like the video and get yourself a copy of the book. You know where from.